Hey dudes, what's up? So in case you didn't see my last video that I posted, we hit 30,000 subscribers on this channel and now we're a little bit past that, but I just wanted to thank you guys again for all being here and liking the content I'm making. Sometimes I take breaks. I'm trying to fix that. I addressed that last video, but I just wanted to say thank you for all being here. It means the world to me that you guys are here. And I mentioned in that video that I wanted to do something special for you guys for hitting 30,000. I just randomly said reading your guys' stories for an hour, and there were a few of you guys who really liked that idea. So that's what we're doing today. I am going to try my best to make this video an hour long or as close to it. I still haven't gotten a backup battery, which I seriously need to get already. I don't know how many months ago I mentioned that in a video that I didn't have one, and so it makes it very hard when my battery runs out of juice when I'm filming and I have to take a few hours to let it charge and then come back and stuff like that. So hopefully, you know, I'm just gonna get that this week. I'm gonna make a note of it and I'm gonna do that this week. But yes, that's what we're gonna be doing today. I'm gonna be reading more of your guys' paranormal stories that you guys sent in to me through my email. Oh, and then one more thing, I wanted to mention that last video I talked a little bit about my Twitch channel, and since then I've had a few of you guys actually come over to Twitch, and it's just a lot of fun meeting you guys and getting to talk to you guys and learning a little bit more about who you guys are. And so I just wanted to again throw it out there that if you're at all interested in seeing me live on Twitch, my link will be in the description. It is ashparanormalstories, just like here, same spelling, same everything, just twitch.com/ashparanormalstories. I'm live every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We do horror games, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there one more time. I love having you guys over there. It means a lot to me. So yeah, I guess now we can just get into the stories. The first one that we're going to be reading, I actually can't find her name, so I won't be including it, but it is a very, very sweet story. So she says, "Hey, I'm a new follower on your YouTube and I love what you do. I've had a few experiences with the paranormal ever since I was little. The very first story that I can remember is when I was about 7 or 8 years old. My family and I had recently moved to a little city called Gulfport in Florida, and it was the first time that I would have had my own room separate from my older sister, whom I had always shared a room with. Growing up, I saw her as my protector, and whenever I was scared, she would help me understand there was nothing to be afraid of. Keeping that in mind, when we moved into this house, I began to suffer from anxiety attacks from having to sleep alone, along with a weird feeling of being unwelcome in that home. About a month into us moving into this house and not being allowed to sneak into my sister's room to sleep, as I had done for the first few weeks, my mother had tucked me into bed, as she had always done when I was that age. She placed a classic CD into my stereo at a low volume in hopes to help me fall asleep. I remember that particular night my anxiety had been going crazy. I remember hearing the CD turn off after its full cycle through all the songs, and then being stuck in silence, which only made it worse. I could remember hearing my stereo click as the CD began to play after a few moments of silence in my room. At this point, my eyes were still closed, and I remember feeling someone sit at the edge of my bed near my feet. I thought it was my mom checking up on me, but when I opened my eyes and looked at the bed, I saw a faint image of an older man with a red trucker hat on. I wasn't scared, but I felt comfortable, and soon after him walking out of my room, I was able to fall asleep. The next morning, I told my mom about what had happened, and she was asking me to describe the man, and I did. I remembered to tell her about the red hat he was wearing. She began to cry. She simply went to her closet and pulled out a photograph of my grandfather wearing the exact red cap I had seen on the man the night before. Ever since then, whenever I get anxious, I can smell a light fragrance of his cologne and a sense of warmth and kind of being reassured that everything's all right." So that's the end of her story. I just thought it was very sweet that her grandfather was able to come to help her when she was feeling a little anxious, especially being that young and moving into a new home. That I can only imagine how stressful and scary and anxiety inducing that must be. So that's just so sweet that an old family member was able to come help you and turn on your CD again to play it to calm you and sit on your bed. That's just very sweet. I also don't know the name of this girl who sent in her story, so I won't be including it. I guess let's just get into it. So she says, "The house I grew up in was fairly old. I don't believe anyone died in it, but I do have a general understanding of how the spiritual world works. All of my childhood in the house, I've seen figures, heard whispers and voices, and felt people touch me. One summer night around 8 o'clock, my sister and I were told to go to bed. This was right after dinner, and usually we would stay up to talk or watch TV. I had a twin-sized bed that my sister and I shared often. She never liked to sleep on hers because she claimed she'd see people reaching out for her in the night. It was so hot that the fan in our room did nothing, so we decided to put covers on the floor and sleep there. We did for a minute, and my sister and I were way too uncomfortable, so we settled on the bed. A couple minutes later, my sister woke me up. She didn't tap me or anything, but her voice woke me. She was on the floor and I couldn't make out her face. I wore glasses, so I thought it was because I couldn't see her, but she was close enough. I made out her smile that was large and fake looking, but what I could remember the clearest was her skin. It was so caked up and flaky. Her eyes were black. I couldn't see the black part of her eyes. Her hair was a mess. I noticed the bright blue shirt, but I really couldn't see anything else of her body. She spoke, saying, "Could you come on the floor with me? Could you come lay with me?" So I agreed and turned away from her to get up. My sister then asked, "Who are you talking to?" I turned and she was on the bed laying next to me. I snapped to the floor and the thing was gone. I was terrified because she was so close to my face and I wasn't used to talking to jinns, spirits, demons, unseen entities. The next morning I told my dad, and as usual he shook it off. My mom told me when I was around her age she saw a jinn that looked exactly like her grandma, with the same ugly flaked skin and black eyes. That night I was awakened by a touch on my leg. I was greeted by the darkness in my room. Thankfully, after 5 break-ins, we finally moved away from the house. Alright, so she said that she was around 11 or 12 when that happened. It was weird, but she's thankful she hasn't seen it in a very long time. So I'm very glad that you haven't seen that in a very long time as well. That absolutely sounds so scary. It reminds me of one of those stories. I'm sure you guys have seen it. The parent goes into the room and the little boy is on the bed saying there's something underneath my bed, and then you look underneath the bed and then it's the little boy and he's like, "Mommy, there's somebody in my bed." You know, and it's like, which one's the real one? It just reminds me of that, although I understand that jinns are completely different. Actually, I don't know. Is that story technically a jinn? I don't know that much about jinns and what they do. I've heard of them like in passing and I've heard a little bit. I haven't really retained any knowledge on them, so I can't really speak confidently about them. I should do research. This next story comes from Gina, and it's not necessarily paranormal, more so than it is aliens. The email is titled "Up Close and Personal UFO Sighting." I don't have enough UFO stories from you guys to make its own separate video, so I will be including it in this. I hope that's okay. Technically it really isn't paranormal, it is otherworldly, so I'm gonna say it's okay. So yeah, I guess let's just get into it. Hi Ashley, my name is Gina. I was listening to your most recent video and someone mentioned how they had an up-close UFO story, and I thought I would tell you my story. I've never had any ghost stories that I'm aware of, but my UFO sighting was very real. You can use my name, I don't care. Thank you for reading, and I love your videos. I grew up in a mountain town in Colorado called Steamboat Springs. I was about 7 to 10, not positive on the exact age. Late one night, I was in my living room watching the MTV show Next, and there was a super bright light shining through my blinds, disrupting my focus. I was very confused as I lived up on a hill and there was no buildings or houses close by in that direction. So I go outside onto my second-story deck, and there, just feet above me, was a UFO just hovering right above my house. It was completely silent, but very bright, and what's crazy is it looked exactly like the average UFO drawing everyone sees. It was round with a super bright light coming from the center. That was the light that was shining through my blinds, and it was so close I could see yellow lights shining through the windows all around it. I screamed and screamed for my dad to come, but he wouldn't even answer me. I just stood there staring at it, totally scared, but totally intrigued and fascinated. I kept going inside to get my dad to come down so someone would believe me. Then in the flash, the UFO just takes off so fast and silent over the house, never to be seen again. And in that moment is when my dad finally comes down the stairs. The more I have looked back at that as I've gotten older, I wonder if they had some kind of hold on my dad or if he was abducted because he would not acknowledge me until it was gone. Still to this day, I wonder why they were just hovering above my house and how I never heard of anyone else seeing this. I lived in a duplex, so it was above my neighbor's house too. Was I the only one who saw it? Or the only one to admit they saw it? I'm very fascinated with aliens and have a strong feeling I will get to see them again one day. This experience has helped me grow up with a super open mind, and the fact that it looked exactly like the drawings just proves lots of others have truly seen UFOs. I believe that things like Bigfoot and mermaids and so on truly do exist. That scares me. I don't know what it is about aliens, but aliens just freak me out. Probably just because we don't know much about them. I am a person who I believe that if we exist on Earth and our universe is as big as it is, it's literally ever expanding. Like, it never stops. It's infinitely expanding and making new things. How can we be the only ones here? That's just what I believe. There's no way with the billions and billions and billions of years it would take to get to like other planets and stuff like that, that we're alone. Maybe in our solar system we're alone, but our galaxy? Probably not. Our universe? Definitely not. And just to think like what they are and what they want, and I mean, they're probably just as curious as we are. So why wouldn't they stop by? They probably have better technology than we do, stuff like that. I don't know. It's just, it all freaks me out. Movies about aliens, I don't like them. The Fourth Kind, or like Dark Skies, I think it's called Dark Skies. Both of those scared me, even though they're not really that scary. I don't like aliens. I don't like thinking about them. I don't want to see them. Thank you, Gianna, for sending that in. Curious to see what you guys' thoughts are. What do you think it was doing above her house? Do you think it was trying to do something with her dad, or just looking? I don't know. Very interesting. So this next story comes from Haley, and it's titled The Man with No Face, which makes me think of Slender Man. Hi, I saw that you wanted some viewer paranormal experiences, so I wanted to share mine, mostly because I'm still terrified. This happened almost a year ago now. I was staying up at my father's house. It was a last-minute decision. I don't have a room fully set up in my dad's house, so I sleep on the couch. That night, everything was fine, but that morning everyone had to go to work or school, and I was left at the house by myself. I had gotten up to make breakfast for myself, and I got that overwhelming feeling of someone watching me. Me knowing that no one was home, I tried to shake it off, but it didn't work, and it kept kind of building, so I turned and looked, and of course there was nothing there. When I had finished eating and I was in the living room, all the events happened back to back, by the way. I saw something moving at the back window. I thought maybe I was just seeing the umbrella thing moving, but when I really looked at it, it was a man in a black suit running up to the back door. I never heard a knock or even the sound of feet hitting the deck, considering he had to run back and forth. I waited for a noise or for the man to run back, but he never did. I, being probably dumb, went to go look, but nothing was there. I went to text my dad about if maybe it was a neighbor, but I never actually saw his face. Like, no defining features, and he wasn't running that fast. So it's not like it was blurred. He just had no facial features. Then, as soon as I walked back into the living room, I heard voices, as if someone was having a conversation. I called out. Of course nothing happened, but the talking never stopped. There were no TVs on, and there were no radios in the house. I kept moving closer, and the voices got louder and louder, but I could not understand what they were saying. They weren't speaking a different language, they were definitely speaking English, but it's like I was trying to eavesdrop on a conversation that was too far away and muffled. But the thing was right outside my door, and that's where the voices were coming from. The voice raised like they were having an argument. When I opened the door, the voice immediately stopped. I walked around the room and said, "Hello?" But of course, nothing. This bedroom had an upstairs loft area, so I looked at the stairs and went up them, but there was nothing there. But then I turned towards a mirror that was facing the stairs, and behind me on the stairs, there was a face clear as day, staring at me expressionless. I turned toward the stairs, but the face was gone. I freaked the hell out, so I ran out of that room and called my dad. Nobody believed me, and nobody in that house believes the paranormal story. This is long. I tried to condense as much as possible. Thank you. I have more stories. I just didn't want to send them all at once. If I was home alone, something like that would definitely freak me out as well. A suit reminds me of like Men in Black aliens, you know? But no face reminds me of... Wait, no face in a suit. That's literally Slender Man. Could it have been Slender Man? I don't think so. He doesn't run. He teleports, right? It could have been some kind of ghost. It could have been something. I don't know. But either way, that would have been very scary to experience alone in a house that you're not really familiar with. Or maybe you are, but like you don't live there. Either way, very scary to be alone and go through something like that. So, I don't know what I would have done. That sounds really scary. But thank you so much for sharing that. So this next story I picked purely off of the title. It made me laugh. I don't know if the story is gonna make us laugh, but the title made me laugh. It's titled "The Old Man Wanted My Uggs." And that just made me giggle, I don't know. So this is from Madeline, and she says, "Hi Ash, my name is Madeline. I'm from Norway and watch your videos regularly. I love your videos. I have lots of stories to tell about my paranormal experiences, but I thought I would share this one with you. First, a little about my house so that you can understand better. We have an apartment in our basement, but we have to walk outside to the other side of the house to get to the entrance to the apartment. In our part of the house, the kitchen and living room are right next to each other without doors or walls. And my bedroom is behind the living room. I don't know, I think I just watched too much HGTV, but I read that and I was like, open concept, nice. Anyways, my mom and my stepdad were on vacation, so I was all alone in the house. I didn't know that my brother and sister were at my aunt's house for the weekend, so I didn't know that I was all alone. I was in the kitchen making myself some breakfast when I heard a loud bang coming from my bedroom. I thought it was my brother going through my room, so I got mad and went to my room to get him out. When I opened my bedroom door, I saw my nightstand standing in the middle of my room, and all my stuff that I had on my makeup table was on my bed. I walked around the house looking for my brother to tell him to clean it up, but he wasn't home. No one was home except me. I got kind of freaked out, oh my god, and walked back to my room to take a picture of the mess. But when I got there, everything was back where it was supposed to be. No. I just stood there thinking that maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, when I heard a very loud bang from the kitchen. I ran out to the living room to check the kitchen, and when I got closer, I could see that all of the cabinets and drawers were opened. I just ran out of the house and down to the apartment in our basement where my father lived at the time. While I was down there, I could hear footsteps in my bedroom and things being moved around. I also heard something reminding me of an old man's voice. Terrified that there was someone in my house, I called my stepbrother asking him to come and check. I didn't notice that he had come a couple of minutes later, and after a while I walked back upstairs to my mom's part of the house. When I walked in, I saw my stepbrother sitting on the couch watching TV. And when I said hello to him, I literally jumped off the couch in shock. I asked him what that was all about, and he said that when he got there, he could hear faint noises coming from my bedroom, and when he went to check the door, it was locked. So he thought I was in my room, and I didn't want him in there, but I was in the apartment in our basement. We just stood there kind of looking at each other like, who is lying, kinda, and that's when a loud bang came from my bedroom again. Both of us ran to my bedroom to check it out, and again, my nightstand was in the middle of the room. I also had a pair of Uggs by my nightstand, and one of the Uggs was thrown across the room. My stepbrother ended up leaving me there because he was terrified. Wow, what a good stepbrother. I don't remember even going to bed that night, but I woke up covered in sweat at around 4 a.m. On the end of my bed, I saw a woman in a dress. I could see facial features and everything. The next day, my mother came home, and I told her everything. Of course, she didn't believe me. That was until I told her about the woman that was sitting on my bed. When I told her about how she looked, my mom got really emotional and started crying. I didn't understand why until a couple of months later when we went to see a psychic. Keep in mind, we didn't even tell the psychic our name or anything about our experiences. The first thing the psychic did was look at my mother and said, "Your mother killed herself when you were young." We were both in shock over what she said because it was true. She told us that my grandmother liked to watch over me while I was sleeping. She also told us that there was an old man in our house and that he was upset because the slippers under the window were too small for him. Oh. When I got home, I went to check under my window, and sure enough, there were my Uggs. After a while, when things started to happen, I would tell them to stop because I got scared, and it would stop. Things are still pretty freaky here, so if you want to hear another story, just let me know. P.S. Sorry if there's any misspelling, not really good in English, and the story is kind of all over the place. No, I felt like it was very well written, thank you. His feet were probably just cold, I don't know. He was upset because they were too small. He's like, where's my slippers? He's like, give me my slippers. Okay, jokes aside, being alone and hearing a noise from your room and like, I mean, I've got a nightstand. I mean, I don't technically count this as a nightstand. I've got an actual nightstand on my other side of my bed. If I walked in here and my nightstand was just like chilling over here, I think I would run out of the house because I would think somebody was like in my house, like a person. I don't know if my mind would go immediately to paranormal. I think it would immediately go to like, oh my god, there's an intruder in the house and I'm gonna die. And then after checking or something, then it would go to, oh my god, there's a ghost in the house, I'm gonna die. Either way, being alone and experiencing things like that, as I've said, I think a couple times now this video, very, very scary, especially when nobody is there to kind of experience it with you and you're like, no, this happened, and they're like, oh yeah, right, yeah, right. It kind of like, you feel very invalidated and like, oh, am I crazy, or like, did that actually happen? And so I'm glad that your stepbrother was there for like a minute and he like kind of experienced something, but then the fact that he left was like kind of a dick move, so I'm sorry that that happened to you and you had to experience it by yourself. But your grandmother watching over you is very sweet. Wow, that story is like very like played with my emotions. It was like very like, oh my god, this is terrifying. Oh my god, that's so sweet. Oh, that's kind of funny, you know? Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really enjoyed it. For this next story, it's a little update on, I think, a couple stories that I've read now from the same person. It's from Caitlin. If you guys remember, she has a little recap, but she was staying in her boyfriend's house and heard a little boy running up and down her hallways. And so she actually has an update on the little boy. It says confirmed demon question mark in her boyfriend's house. My boyfriend thinks it's a Shinigami, which makes me immediately think of Death Note and Death Note the anime, if you guys have seen it. Or there also is like a live action movie. I wouldn't recommend watching that though. I did not like that. So she says, hey Ash, I know it's been a long time since my last update. Life got busy and chaotic. I'm just gonna jump right in. Let me start with a recap. A little over a year ago, when I was staying at my boyfriend's house often, I started hearing something running up and down the stairs. This would sometimes last hours, and it happened so often that I eventually just got used to it. But then the running on the stairs eventually turned into running up the stairs and down the hallway, right to our bedroom door and back down. One day when I was home alone cleaning, the running up and down the stairs had been going on for about an hour, and I barely even noticed it at that point. Until I was picking up some trash and started walking towards the door where the trash can was, when suddenly whatever was running on the stairs ran fast as hell right up to the door, literally like a foot away from me. I ran to the other side of the room, and whatever it was ran back down the hallway right after. Another day when I was home alone, and it was around the same time as when my boyfriend's brother usually gets home, I was sitting in our room when suddenly I heard 3 knocks on the door. Thinking it was Tony, my boyfriend's brother, I got up to answer the door when suddenly I stopped in the middle of the room because something in my head told me not to answer that door. So instead, I looked out the window to see that Tony had just barely pulled into the driveway and hadn't even come inside yet. I read in the comments that 3 knocks is a sign that it's demonic. Pertinent to the update, my boyfriend and I have also heard a little boy's voice and a woman's voice. There is a really weird and uncomfortable energy coming from the boys' room. The kids are there on the weekends. And me and my boyfriend have both had this really weird experience that we still can't explain. Happened to us at different times when we were passing by the boys' room. We were coming out of the bathroom and going to our room when suddenly we felt really dizzy and disoriented and heard like 20 voices talking and yelling at the same time. It lasted a few seconds and stopped, and it didn't sound like it was something other people would have heard. It was definitely in our heads, but it sounded like it was out loud. And the biggest thing up until this update that happened was when I actually saw the little boy with my own eyes. It was quick, but very clear. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway of our room and turned around to walk to the bathroom, and right when my boyfriend was out of view, the little boy passes by the doorway in the opposite direction and walks into the boys' room. The little boy was about the same height as my 9-year-old niece and was dressed just like how kids dress, in blue jeans and a light green t-shirt with white shoes. It was so clear. The kids, Tony, his revolving door of girlfriends, and the cats even, have also been having experiences. The kids have also been seeing shadows downstairs in the playroom at the end of the stairs, also pertinent to the update. The update. My boyfriend, Tony, and the 2 oldest kids all started seeing shadows downstairs and in the hallways. I hadn't seen anything other than that one shadow, and ever since I saw it, I've chosen not to look. In my head, if I didn't see it, it's not there. I sometimes feel like something is watching me when I'm trying to sleep. There's this uncomfortable energy in the corner of my boyfriend's room. I feel like something's there. Again, I choose to roll over and not look. My boyfriend, on the other hand, doesn't have the self-control to deny it's there though. One night when everybody was asleep, he went downstairs for something from the kitchen, which is directly across from the dark playroom. As he turned around in the kitchen to walk towards the stairs, he saw out of the corner of his eyes a large shadow moving in the playroom. He stopped to see what it was, and as it came into focus, he began to see this tall, dark creature with a huge mouth, gnarly teeth, and really large wings. He freaked out and ran up the stairs, but made the mistake of looking behind him when he got to the top. He stared at this thing for a brief moment when it began to slowly smile the creepiest ear-to-ear grin you could ever imagine. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? That's exactly what I had thought when my boyfriend described it. I told him, "You've been working really hard and not getting enough sleep lately. You're probably just sleep deprived, babe." That's what I thought, until Tony saw the exact same thing a few days later. Tony doesn't see how bad it is yet, but he's not doing well mentally. There's a reason for him not being able to keep a healthy relationship. He's not happy, and he's been drinking a lot also. My boyfriend was in a dark place at that time too, but nothing like whatever Tony is dealing with. This thing is most attracted to Tony, but seems to love anybody that's in a dark place mentally. My boyfriend was reluctant to tell Tony what he saw because of how ridiculous it sounds, but he told Tony anyways and got a response he never would have expected. That he saw the exact same thing in the playroom, and it would basically follow him whenever he was drunk. Ew. He said it would get right in his face and grin ear to ear. When he would lay down, it felt like something was on top of him holding him down, and he would even have dreams about it too. They both described the exact same creature. I've attached a picture of what it looks like. My boyfriend thinks it's a Shinigami. Here's some info on Wikipedia about the Shinigami. Shinigami, god of death, deathbringer, or death spirit, are gods or supernatural spirits that invite humans towards death in certain aspects of Japanese religion and culture. Shinigami has been described as monsters, helpers, and creatures of darkness. Shinigami are used for tales and religions in Japanese culture. It is a demon that makes humans want to die, and it is said that upon being possessed by it, in a shock, one should suddenly want to die, so it is sometimes explained to be a Shinigami. It's been known to attach to people with really dark or sad energy. No more Wikipedia, this is back to her update. I also mentioned in one of my previous updates that it felt like there was a correlation to the timing of the experiences when we first started having them, and to the timing of when Tony's ex-girlfriend, who claims to be a witch, and my niece says she had a spell book downstairs in the playroom one day. Again, I know that sounds ridiculous, especially coming from a 9-year-old, but there's just too many coincidences for me not to wonder. Would move in and out every time they broke up. I don't think that that sounds ridiculous. There are witches and Wiccans all over the place nowadays, I feel, so she definitely could have been. It could have been a spell book, it could have been a book of shadows, it could have literally been anything. I do believe that it's a little bit less crazy than everybody thinks it is. There are a lot of people who are interested in like witchcraft and Wicca and all of those things. His ex at one point had really sad energy that over time turned into very angry energy. Their relationship was very off and on, and she moved in and out every other week. In the beginning, every time we started having experiences, it was around the same time she moved back in, and then when she moved out, they stopped. She was eventually so angry with Tony that she moved out permanently, but the experiences and weird energy stayed, and continued to get worse as time passed. Flash forward to one of Tony's drunk outbursts, and his new girlfriend, Courtney, is trying to console him because he keeps saying this Shinigami thing is on top of him and won't let him move. And he's literally throwing a fit trying to get it off of him. I know, this still sounds ridiculous, right? But even when Tony got sober, he still saw the Shinigami thing often. There's just too many coincidences pointing to this thing being real. I don't know, I'm just happy to be in my little bubble of denial and not experience any of that. Because of the quarantine, my boyfriend has been staying at my house now and hasn't had any experiences like this since, but Tony still does often. And then she included a picture of what the Shinigami looked like and what they described it as, and I'll put it up right now for you guys to look at. Honestly, apart from Death Note, I did not know that they were real creatures. That makes sense though. I mean, an anime being centered around these creatures, it had to have been pulled from like folklore or something like that. So she also just recently sent me another email with a little follow-up, so I'll just read that really quickly too. If you haven't read it already, the major update is in the previous email, and this one is a follow-up. So this is probably / hopefully going to be the last update. Tony's been doing a lot better lately. I think his new girlfriend has a lot to do with it. I'm surprised to say that so far this relationship might work out. As far as I know, Tony hasn't seen the Shinigami lately, but the kids are still scared of something being there. So I think it's still there, but not as interested in Tony anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if it moves on to Tony's dad, who lives across the street and comes over every day. His wife and entire family just recently left him and moved to Tahoe. Rightfully so, he's very abusive. He's been the most depressed I've ever seen him, and he's been locking himself away in his house and not talking to anybody. It definitely makes me wonder if he's been seeing this thing now too. Me and my boyfriend don't talk to him anymore though, so I don't think there will be another update. Thank you for telling our story. Kate. Well, Kate, thank you so much for all of the updates. I really appreciate that. A little bit concerning that the kids are still scared of something there. I hope everything gets better. I hope it does go away. If anybody in the comments knows a little bit more about Shinigamis other than just my knowledge from anime, which I don't even know how realistic it is, I assume it would be a little bit realistic if it comes from the country where that's originated, but I don't know. I didn't know that they were real creatures until now. It doesn't surprise me that they are, because again, it's based off of folklore probably. Thank you so much for the updates, and thank you for the happy update at the end. Well, kind of happy, kind of not. This next story comes from Amara. Hey Ash, my name is Amara. I have some crazy paranormal experiences ranging from when I was little to even now being an adult with a husband and kids in my own home. I guess I'll start from when I was little and living on a military base in California. I remember always being scared of our little house on the base, but there was one night in particular that freaked me out. It was about 2 in the morning and I had to get up to go to the bathroom. As I got up and headed for the door, in my half-asleep state, I noticed something move in the hallway. I don't think it fully registered to my brain because I was so tired, so I brushed it off and headed for the bathroom. When I finished, I turned around and there was a very tall white silhouette standing in front of me. I froze and then thought I would run to my mom's room since it was directly across from the bathroom. When I took a step to walk around this figure, it jumped at me. I panicked and bolted for my mom, but when I got to her room and tried to wake her to tell her, I instead woke up my very cranky Marine stepdad who yelled at me and said to get my ass back to my room. In complete and utter fear, I tried to crawl onto my mom's bed, but instead was shoved out by my mom's then husband and told to leave or he would beat my ass. Oh my god. I peeked into the hallway and saw nothing, so I started walking to my room. Halfway down the hall, the figure had very quickly ran out of the bathroom and towards me, and in fear had me pinned to the wall. I pressed myself to the wall as hard as I could and inched to my room while the figure continued to jump at me and scream in my face. I had finally made it to my bedroom where I promptly turned on the light and ran and jumped into my bed for safety. I looked around and saw nothing, so with all the lights on, I went back to bed. When I got older, I told my mom about it, and she told me the base we lived on, which was torn down a few years ago, was built on top of a Native American burial ground, or so she was told. I have more stories if you want to hear them. Thanks. Bruh. Oh my god. I hate that it was waiting for you. I hate that it was hiding. Usually white symbolizes good, so I don't know why a light-ish figure would scream at you. But then again, I guess maybe there's something that I don't know about. If anybody knows what that could be, please let us know. Leave it in the comments, because I sure don't know what it is or what it could be, because all of the white figures that I've seen, I've been told that they were angels, but this one does not sound like an angel if it's screaming at you and pinning you against a wall and jumping at you. That, unless it was like just trying to get your attention, it could be. Maybe it was like trying to tell you, I don't know, if you were young, it can't really tell you to leave. So this story comes from Abigail, and she says, "Hey Ash, my name's Abigail. I have many paranormal stories from when I was a kid, but this is one from when I was a teenager that still sticks with me. I'm sorry it's kind of long. Anyway, when my family and I moved into my mom's current house, my little sister, who I want to say was around 3 or 4 at the time, I was around 17, would always talk about this little girlfriend she had made, and at first obviously we all just laughed and said that it was cute that she had an imaginary friend. However, it quickly turned very dark and scary. She would tell us about how her friend's mom was mean and scary, and she would lock her and her sister into cages, and she wouldn't feed them, and their mother killed them. Keep in mind she was only 3 years old, so although she was very vocal and imaginative, what 3-year-old thinks this up? My parents passed it up, but it always really creeped me out. She would often start staring at the corners in her hallway and throw herself onto the ground and scream and cry for no joke at least an hour, and we would all take turns trying to console her, but she would kick us away and continue screaming. I think she would see the mom and was terrified, honestly. It always freaks me out because the entire time she would stare at the corner. I used to sleep with my door open because my parents' room was diagonal from mine, and it made me feel safer. However, in the summer, we had a small box fan in the hallway, and I remember waking up and seeing what I thought was my little sister run from my parents' room to behind the fan and crouch over. I sat up in bed and asked her what she was doing, and then repeatedly said her name. She ignored me, so I guess in my super sleepy state, I assumed my mom was awake too, and was waving her back to bed. She usually slept with them. The next morning, I asked my little sister what she was doing and if she had a nightmare, because she had them frequently. She looked very confused and said she never got up that night. I asked my mom later on if my sister had gotten up at all through the night, and my mom told me she didn't feel her crawl over her or anything, so as far as she knew, she slept all night. I think maybe it was the little girl, but I barely slept for weeks after this, and would just stare out my door terrified that I'd see her again. My sister talked about her less and less over the years, and I haven't heard about her recently. Although I know she was probably harmless, I think knowing that if she was real, so was her mom, is what really terrifies me. Anyway, I have so many stories from my old house, and I'm sorry if this got long, but I love your channel and thank you for listening. Aw, brother. If the little girl is real, it's very scary because what she was saying about her mom and what her mom did to her and her sister would be true. Very scary to think what somebody could do to another person, let alone their own child. But sometimes things that are scarier than the paranormal are other humans. I know that stories about other people being creepy is always what scares me a lot more than paranormal stories. Although some paranormal stories can be very, very scary and can make your skin crawl, but what other people can do to like other people, or just creepy things that they do, like the way that they act, is so much scarier to me than the paranormal. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that that didn't happen. I hope it was just an overactive imagination, but for a 17-year-old to see that, maybe it was something different. Hopefully it was something different. We'll just go with that it was something different. Hello again. I'm back on a different day. I'm actually gonna read a couple more stories just because the video wasn't quite long enough with the ones that I had previously filmed. So that's why I look different. It is a different day. The shirt that I was wearing the last time I filmed is actually in the wash right now, or else I would be wearing it. So I just picked another black shirt. I hope that's okay. So this next story actually comes from someone from my stream. Her name is Charlie. Charlie, if you're watching this, hello. Hi, how are you? How you doing? Okay, so she says, "Hi Ash, I wanted to go into a bit more depth about something I've spoken about on stream before, and figured this would be as good a place as any to put it. My bedroom and the only bathroom in the house are at the end of the hall which leads into the kitchen. And off the kitchen through an archway is the living room. There is another hallway that runs parallel to the one I just described, which is closer to the bathroom, that leads to the front door, and another archway leading to the living room. For the past couple of months now, I have been seeing a dark figure at the end of the kitchen. It appears to be low to the ground, as if it were hunching over, and almost seems to be peering at me around the corner. It's pretty dark in color, like a dark gray, and not 100% opaque. I can almost see through it, but it's defined enough that I can make out a distinct shape. Head, shoulders, sometimes an arm/hand gripping the edge of the archway. I usually see it when I walk out of my bedroom and am heading to the bathroom, as the two are practically right across from each other. Once I see it, it quickly ducks away into the living room. And I must be clear, this is not a out of the corner of my eye situation. I look at the figure square in the face before it runs away. The first few times it freaked me out, but then I started to get used to it. I would get the feeling that it seemed more curious than threatening, so I kind of stopped paying it any mind. Recently, however, it stopped showing up at the far end of the house like it was before. Now I've started seeing it duck around the closer hallway which leads to the front door. This is much more unsettling for me because that hallway corner is only about 6 or 7 feet away from my front door, and only about 3 feet from the bathroom. I'm not really sure what its intentions are with coming closer like that. I'm still not afraid of it at the moment, which I believe is a good sign, but I'm definitely becoming more unnerved. I intend to ask my mom if she's seen it. She's been very sensitive to the paranormal since a young age, and continues to perceive spirits to this day. But to be honest, I'm a huge wimp and I'm kind of scared to ask her about it. If anything changes, I'll definitely keep you updated, but I wanted to share this again since this thing decided to get closer." Ew, okay. I mean, I will definitely ask you about this on stream, but I'm very curious to know if anything has happened since this email was a little bit ago. I don't like that it's coming closer. Maybe it... Since you're not afraid of it, that makes me think that maybe it's nothing to be feared. Maybe it is just curious. But since it is getting closer, I probably would be a little bit unnerved, I guess? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of it as if it was in my house and it was started off like down the hall and then like it kind of got closer. Wow, yeah, no, I would be really freaked out if that happened. Is it every day? I just read it and I don't remember if you said if it was every day or not. For the past couple of months now. So I don't know if it's every day, but if it was every day and it just decided to jump closer one time and it's staying there, I would definitely be pretty scared. So yeah, I hope that it's not any closer now than it was before. Maybe it's gone away. I hope that's the case. Wow, yeah. Ooh. This next story comes from Jude, and it's titled Couch Demon. Hi, my name is Jude. I often have paranormal experiences and am followed by a mostly peaceful, benevolent spirit who has attached herself to me. This isn't about her though. I recently encountered something else. A few months ago, I left home and moved into an apartment above my best friend's garage. It's a studio, so the couch and kitchen are visible from my bed. Thank you, Brandy. My boyfriend has been staying with me since COVID-19 got bad to keep his family safe, since we are both essential workers, and it has been going overall smoothly. I am a chronic insomniac, so waking up in the middle of the night or having trouble sleeping is not uncommon for me. However, on this particular night, I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. with a feeling of dread in my gut. I rarely have nightmares, so I know it wasn't that, and I wasn't frozen, so I know it wasn't sleep paralysis. When I opened my eyes, I saw my boyfriend sitting on the couch. He wasn't doing anything in particular, just seemed to be lost in thought. I was about to ask him what he was doing up so late when he looked at me and smiled. Then I felt my boyfriend turn over in his sleep right next to me. I kept my eyes on this version of him sitting on the couch. At the time, I wasn't sure if the one on the bed or the one on the couch was really him. Oh, I'm smiling, but I'm creeped out. The idea of a demon sitting next to me wasn't much better of an option in my mind than the couch demon, so you can imagine my terror. The spirit that follows me around has a calming presence to her. She sometimes plays pranks or tries to spook me and my guests, but she's generally non-threatening. This present felt threatening, not at all like her. I blinked, and the couch demon was gone. I had trouble going back to sleep, but I felt that if I left the bed, something horrible would happen. I wrote this off as a nightmare, even though deep down I know it wasn't, until my best friend came over around a month later. She also has a history of paranormal experiences, and was playing with one of my cats when she froze and stared towards the living room. I asked her what was wrong, and she said she saw a headless figure dart towards my bed. When I pressed her further, she said she could have sworn it was just my boyfriend passing by, but he had no head. My boyfriend was at work at the time, with his head firmly on his shoulders. Thank you for reading. I hope you are well, Jude. Oh my god, Jude, that's insane. Oh, goodness. Again, it's like that story of the which one is the kid on top of the bed and the kid under the bed. The, oh my gosh, somebody's on top of my bed. Oh, somebody's underneath my bed. You know, I mean, I'm glad that it wasn't next to you. Oh my god. I can't imagine waking up and experiencing something like that. Especially like right after waking up and being half asleep, half awake. That's so scary. The headless figure just running towards your bed that your friend saw. Oh my god. Oh my god. I would really love to know. I know you just sent me that email, so like I don't know if there's any updates now, but if you ever have an update, please let me know. That's so interesting. I wonder if there's anything, if there's like a portal or like something in like that apartment. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That is so creepy. That really freaked me out. Oh my god. Oh, so this last one for this video that we are going to be including comes from Emily. I am going to read the whole thing. It is quite long, except the only part that I'm not going to put in the video. She included this little paragraph about some dark, bad things that have happened in the house or in the family that could have possibly stirred up some paranormal activity in the place, in the family. The reason I'm not going to include this is because it is a little bit graphic and I don't want to trigger or upset anybody. So I will be leaving it out, but do know that there is some backstory to the family and the household. Emily, I hope that that's okay that I left that out. But now that we have that out of the way, we will get into her stories. There are 4, and yes, so okay. So she says, "Hey Ash, my name is Emily. These are some juicy stories, so don't hesitate to put this in a video. You can say my name and where this happened if you read this in a video. So, I was born and raised till age 15 in a small town in the woods right outside of Cleveland, Texas, called Tarkington Prairie. Tarkington was founded in the 1920s and was/is used for farming and cattle raising. It used to be more of a prairie, but now it is heavily wooded. My house growing up was surrounded by miles of woods, as was everyone else's, to give you an idea. Now, my house was built in 1979 to give you an idea of its age. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal, and this house was clearly haunted with at least one spirit and several demonic entities. I've always seen shadow figures and such, so that wasn't what made me freaked out by this house growing up. And, to be honest, I didn't realize these experiences were paranormal till shortly before we moved. So, our front door throughout my whole childhood was the same one built with the home. It had old, curled up metal on the edges where the door and wall met, so when it would open and close, it sounded like metal scraping and was super loud and distinct. One day, my mom was home napping whilst us kids were at school. She woke up to the sound of the front door opening and almost slamming shut. She suspected it was us coming home from school and didn't check her phone to see if it was even time for us to be home out of tiredness and went back to sleep. When we got home, she came out of her room looking super confused as to why she heard the door again and told us about hearing the door hours earlier. We were all a bit spooked, but just kind of brushed it off. Story 2. The neighbor's dog. We had these creepy neighbors who had very violent dogs. We almost never saw the neighbors or their son. Kids on our road would rumor that they were murderers because of how mysterious and creepy these people were. They also had a pit bull mix, I have nothing against pit bulls by the way, and a larger mixed chihuahua. The pit mix was named Tina, and the smaller dog was Rusty. These dogs ran loose down our road and would chase me and my brother when we got off the bus or went outside to play, trying to bite us. We were around 9 and 10, so these dogs were pretty big to us and could have severely injured us. My mom tried to leave the neighbors a note about it, but they had a no trespassing sign, and in Tarkington, people weren't afraid to shoot unwanted people off their property. She put the note in the mailbox and never got a response. Me and my brother just resorted to carrying large sticks and baseball bats with us to defend ourselves. One night, my mom came home with groceries and had us go out to get them. In the country, it's pitch black out at night, and I'm terrified of the dark, so I had my oldest brother go outside to get them. We also had wild hogs that went in our yard at night, and they will tear you up, so I hated going out there at night. He went out and didn't come back inside for what felt like 15 minutes, so I got concerned because we have boars and even wolves. Right when I was gonna go outside to check on him, he came inside looking extremely pale and in shock. I finally got him to tell me what happened, and he said that Tina, the pit mix, walked up to him. He was confused as to why she wasn't trying to attack and went to pet her. He realized that she looked a little off. Her back legs looked longer than normal, and she was missing patches of fur. He said that her eyes almost looked like human eyes. As soon as he moved towards her, she yelped and ran into the woods in fear. He said that her yelp sounded super off, almost like if a human was imitating the sound. I'm pretty sure that was a skinwalker, which I am kind of hesitant to say because I know that that's a rule. You can't talk about him, you can't say the name. But wow, okay, a break in the two stories just to talk about that. That topic freaks me out so much. I have like a love-hate relationship with stories like that because they are so scary, and that the littlest experiences with them freak me out to no end. But they are so interesting. It's so interesting how stuff like that can exist. And I hate what the descriptions of what they look like. If you guys don't know much about the topic, I suggest looking it up for yourselves. It's basically people who can transform into animals and other things, but they always look a little bit off. They always kind of look like humans trying to look like dogs or cats or some kind of animal. Just look it up if you're interested, but be careful because I think that even looking them up is bad and I'm talking about it too much, so okay. The third story, insomnia. This happened when I was 14. I've always had insomnia, but this summer it was at its worst. I would stay awake all night and occasionally take a 30-minute nap during the day. One night I was at the computer in our living room. My mom wasn't home because at this time she had a boyfriend that lived with her in New Caney, Texas, so only me and my siblings stayed in the house at this point. We were all still children, mind you, so all of the lights in the house were off, and just the light of the monitor was lighting the room. I remember it being 3 a.m. because, cough cough, devil's hour. We had a hallway that, if I would have looked to the right of the computer, I would have been looking directly into it. Now, I see creepy stuff in my peripheral like people staring at me when they weren't, and figures and such. And that's what I was seeing down this hallway. I quickly looked down the hallway in hopes it would disappear and I could stop being creeped out, but it didn't. I saw my former stepdad standing right there. I couldn't stop looking, and the longer I stared, the creepier it got. He had a white beard and began to cough blood into it. I don't remember looking away. I just remember it becoming morning and I was still on the computer. The fourth story. Man in the hall. Our hallway had 3 bedrooms and a bathroom in it. My brother's room was in that hallway. They shared a bunk bed and would just leave their door open at night. My brother Justin is the oldest boy and slept on the bottom bunk, and Cameron is the youngest boy and he slept on the top. One night, my brother Justin was sitting awake and looking out the door when he saw a tall man pacing in our hallway. He pretended to be asleep, but peeked to keep an eye on the man. He stared for around 30 minutes while the man paced until he fell asleep. In the morning, he figured it was a dream, but decided to tell Cameron. Before he could even finish, Cameron looked freaked out because he saw the same man and thought he was dreaming too. So yeah, those are just a few of the more memorable experiences in this house. I'm sure there were more little things, like things moving places and stuff like that, but there were 7 people in that small house, so we never thought anything of it. Tarkington in general is just a creepy place. I've been lost in the woods there with a friend, and it was the worst. I love Tarkington out of nostalgia, but damn. I love your videos. Feel free to put it all in one video. All 4 of those are extremely creepy. The man pacing, it's interesting that your brothers both saw him at the same time. That kind of justifies that, like, it actually was real, you know, for both of them, I'm sure. I'm sure it made it a lot worse. It's so much easier just to be like, oh, it was a dream, than face the reality of it possibly being somebody pacing around your house. The dog, that one, I know I already talked about the dog one, but that one still I think is the scariest for me just because of the context of it. Thank you, Emily, so much for sharing those. Those are all the stories that I'm going to be reading. I know that I already filmed an outro, so I guess I will just jump back to me a few days ago. Thank you again to everybody who sent their stories. I will just say that, even though I'm literally gonna say that again in 2 seconds. So yeah, okay, bye. 3rd time's the charm, I guess. Okay, so I am back for one final story. The other 3 stories that I filmed weren't quite long enough, and then I ended up having to cut out a tiny bit. The final video that I had was only 53 minutes, and although that is close to an hour, I just wanted to deliver when I said an hour-long video. So hopefully this last story that I'm going to be picking will make it completely 1 hour, if not 59 minutes, somewhere close to that. There's a cat hair on my lip. So yes, I am back for one final story. So this last story is a little bit longer, so I do feel like it'll get us to that mark. It's titled Stories from a Funeral Home, which makes me super intrigued and I'm really excited. The person who sent in this story would like to remain anonymous, so let's just get into it. Hi Ash. I really enjoy your videos where you read paranormal stories from your viewers and would like to share some experiences with you. I've dealt with creepy things since I was 13. That didn't stop me from working at a funeral home while studying in college. If you do read my stories, I would prefer to remain anonymous since I would like to return to my old funeral home job eventually. For background, it's more important to note that I grew up in a culture where we believe that the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Death has always been a transition that is as important as birth, which is why the idea of working at a funeral home never bothered me. I'll just dive right into the 2 experiences that have stuck with me the most. I won't use real names in the stories. I had been working at a funeral home for a couple of months. It was around 9 at night and a large viewing had just ended. So, I was closing up the funeral home. I cleaned up the meeting rooms, prepared my office for the next day, and went to close our chapel. We had a chapel and a reception hall. I wasn't a funeral director, but was told I would have to help with bodies sometimes. That night was the first night I would touch a body without a director around, and I was nervous. I ended up doing what a funeral director told me to do if I was ever anxious: talk to the deceased. So I did. I walked over to the casket and softly said, "Mr. Smith, I will be closing your casket for the evening. I'm just going to put tissues on your hands and face so there's no chance of the makeup staining the casket lining before the funeral tomorrow. Okay?" As I was placing the tissues on the deceased's face, I felt a wave of sadness. Sadness for his family, friends, colleagues. I felt weirded out and quickly turned off the lights, set the alarm, got into my car, and left. Less than a mile away from the funeral home, I was, again, hit with this wave of grief. Then the weirdest thing happened. The temperature in my car dropped, I had the heater on full blast, and the radio shut off. My car started beeping and notified me that the passenger in the passenger seat didn't have their seatbelt on. I quickly pulled over and turned to my empty passenger seat. I said the first thing that came to my mind. I'm sorry, but I cannot help you. I do not have the answers. Please do not follow me. Suddenly, the beeping stopped. My radio turned back on and the car became warm. I've got really bad chills right now. That's so cool. Not to rank experiences, but that is probably one of the coolest stories I've heard. Cool as in it's not scary, you know? It's just like, I can't believe that happened to you. That is so cool. Thank you, Brandy. Brandy agrees. That is so cool. Wow. Oh my god. I'm sorry. I'm like geeking out over this story, but that is so cool. Okay, next story. The second experience happened after I had been at my job for over a year. We were dealing with a tragic case. A double murder-suicide where the murdered were 2 little boys. All day, I heard strange sounds like children were running around. Out of the corner of my eye, I would see the shape of a small boy running past my office window. My back faced the lobby, and I would keep seeing something like 2 little boys in the reflection of my computer screen. By this point in time, I had gotten used to weird things happening at work, but this felt wrong. I dreaded being alone once everyone else had left. We had a viewing in the late afternoon, and when night came, I got ready to close up. Everything was fine until I closed the chapel. The sound system started playing music on its own, and it sounded like something was running around in between the pews. I left the chapel room to turn off the lights, and before I touched the switch, it flicked off. As I pulled my hand back, the switch flicked back to on. Then off, then on, then off, then on, then off, then on, then off. I had always been told not to show my fear when something felt evil. So, even though I was terrified, I turned to face where the running sounds came from. I crossed my arms and shouted, "Enough! You are not welcome here. Leave. Do not follow me." That didn't stop the light switch from turning on and off, but I set the alarm and walked away as calmly as I could. As I drove out of the driveway, I could still see the lights turning on and off. I'm not good at writing down my stories, so I'm sorry if they're not very clear. I hope you enjoyed them at least a little bit. I wish you health, sanity, and creative stimulation during this crazy pandemic. Best wishes. Aw, that little ending note's so cute. And I know you said that you were sorry that you're not very good at writing down your own stories, but honestly, I felt that those were written so well. I felt I was reading a movie, if I'm being honest. Oh my goodness. If you have any other stories from your time working at the funeral home, I would totally be interested to hear more. They are so super interesting. I can only imagine how much you would experience working in a place like that. And having all that energy around, and it's probably stirred up constantly. So that is so interesting. So thank you so much for sharing. Like I said earlier, that first story is so cool. I mean, the second one is too, with the light switch. That sounds like a horror movie on its own. I'm sorry, my thoughts are so scrambled right now. Both really cool experiences. Thank you so much for sharing. If you have any more stories you would like to share, please let me know. Please send me an email. I would love to hear more. And thank you again for sending those in. Okay. Been filming for 9 minutes. If this doesn't get the video to an hour, I don't know what will. Goodbye. So thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you again for 30,000 subscribers. I can't even comprehend that number or you guys being here, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys liked the video, and thank you again to everybody who keeps sending in their stories. Although I'm not able to read all of them on video, I do read them all, so I really do appreciate you guys sending them in. If you want to send me a story for next time, you can send your stories to ashparanormalstories@gmail.com. I'll put it across the screen here, and I'll also put it in the top of the description below. And just let me know if you want me to keep you anonymous. I can totally do that as well. Again, if you guys want to join me on Twitch ever to see some scary streams or just fun regular streams, my Twitch is twitch.tv/xscheria. It'll also be in the description, as well as my other social medias. I have a Twitter, and then I also have an Instagram, which is mostly cosplay related. I feel like I should throw that out there because I know cosplay isn't everybody's cup of tea, which is fine, but those links will also be in the description. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I hope everybody's doing all right with everything going on. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everybody.